Well, hey there, welcome to Church 180 Online this week, and we're just excited that you're joining us via Facebook or YouTube. My name is Tony. I'm the lead pastor here at Church 180, and I want to personally invite you, if you're in the area, to Veterans Park Community Center, 785 East Palomar Road in Chula Vista. That's a 91911 address, and we would love to have you with us for service on a Sunday morning. We have an amazing, like we say around here, we disproportionately invest in kids and students, and we have an amazing elementary preschool program going on birth through 5th grade while we're having service on a Sunday morning there. We'd love to see you and your family some Sunday soon, and we'd love that. But today I'm excited to pick up in week 6 of our Jame series as we enter into chapter 3 together. And just to get going, I want to tell you a little story, because I remember my family and I, we lived in New Zealand for nearly 6 and a bit years. And we did a lot of those long haul flights across the Pacific Ocean. And specifically the Auckland, New Zealand to the LA leg was, or San Francisco, was about a 13 to 14 hour flight. And we did this with specifically our oldest, Ruthie, a few times, but then also Ruthie and Jenny a little bit. And it's kind of a nightmare with kids and the whole thing. But yeah, we did that. And I remember Ruthie on one of the flights back to the States one night was inconsolable. And so I picked her up, and she's crying, and I'm walking around the whole flight, which is a nightmare because it's the middle of the night, you're disoriented, you don't know where it is and what's going on. And I'm like, man, I don't really know what to do. And here I am in the midst of all these people trying to sleep, and I'm like, okay, I got to sing the song. I've got to sing her the song that is her favorite. And so I started it out and I said, one dark night when we were all in bed. Anybody know this song? Old Lady Leary left the lamp in the shed, and then the cow kicked it over. Winked his eye and said, it'll be a hot time in the old town tonight. Fire, fire, fire. And she had learned that song from her grandma. And she learned her song from her munga, Grandma Bev, if you're tuning in. And so that song is legitimately a fable or a tale about the night that 3 square miles of the city of Chicago burned to the ground. Now, we don't know how it actually happened. We know that there was some anti-Irish sentiment. So Old Lady Leary could have been, just a fable or fictitious tale to blame the Irish at the time. We don't really know completely what happened. We do know that 300 people lost their lives and over 100,000 people were instantly homeless the night that Chicago burnt to the ground. And see, this is where we're going today. This is where we're at. This is a perfect picture. As James, I'm going to allude to a later verse that we're going to cover in a minute, but he says this. He says, the tongue, okay, is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. So he's saying the propensity of that thing that is in our mouth to burn and scorch the ground in the area around us is immense and can happen. And let me tell you, this is where we're going today, and it's going to get bad before it gets better. And to be real honest, since we're going through this entire text, he doesn't address much of what we're going to talk about in the most positive light. See, we're going to be in James chapter 3. And we're going to be talking about taming the tongue. And we're going to pick up right now. We're just going to pick up in verse 1. And it says this before he goes this direction. He says, not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that those of us who teach will be judged more strictly. I remember right after I felt the call from God to go into ministry and to be a teacher of the Word of God. I remember coming across this passage and just being like, maybe I should be out. Because it's talking about not that we're going to be judged to a higher or held to a higher standard, but that we're going to be judged more strictly based on the standard that everybody who claims to be a Christ follower is held to. And James is letting us know that, man, because of what he's about to talk about with the tongue, and because of that whole thing, there's a propensity, there is power in what is going on right now. There is power in a message. There is power in conveying a message to a group of people, and there's power standing with a microphone in a room full of people, or opening up your mouth to an online audience. And there's power in leading an entire congregation, entire church, an entire group of Christ followers astray. Or as he later goes on, there's power in poisoning the environment. I mean, if you think about it, most of the greatest atrocities that have ever happened on this planet, they stem from rhetoric, don't they? They stem from words. They stem from a charismatic leader who oftentimes opens his mouth, gets a microphone, mobilizes a crowd in a horrific direction. That's what we look at when we look at, the transatlantic slave trade, and we look at slavery. That's what we look at when we see the Holocaust. That's what we look at when we see apartheid. That's what we look at when we see the Jim Crow era, and just some of the most despicable atrocities in the last 100, 200 years. And it all stems from words that lead people astray and send people down a road and a path of destruction. Consider what a great forest fire is set on fire because of a small spark. Consider a cow kicking a lantern and burning an entire city to the ground almost. See, what James is getting at, and what he's going to get at, is words, okay? Words, even in this setting, but also not in this setting. Just words in life have tremendous power. Then he goes on to say this. He says, we all stumble in many ways, and anyone who's never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. So he's saying, no, nobody's able to keep their full body in check. Nobody's got this figured out. And then he gives us a few word pictures about this. He says, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they're so large and driven by strong winds, they're steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil full of deadly poison. If you got the email this week, you heard me talk about how, if you've been to a circus, it's astounding the amount of animals that we have been able to, as human beings, to tame. And then if you caught up on Tiger King, or you saw Tiger King at the very beginning of the pandemic when all of us were looking for a quirky new show to watch, which landed at the perfect time. And if you watched Tiger King, you would have seen the crazy, absurd story of a man named Joe Exotic who made it his life mission to have tons of tigers and to kind of, maybe tame them. And we saw that he was semi-successful in this. Semi is very key word there when it comes. But I think that what James is trying to say in this passage is, man, like we've been able to tame all these animals. Like, you can go to a circus and see an elephant, that's kind of under control. You can watch Tiger King and see Joe Exotic, kind of control these tigers. But he said no one, absolutely no one, is able to control the tongue. And no one is able to tame the tongue. And so I want to kind of start out by just out of these word pictures, out of everything that we're going to cover, I want to run through a couple of points that I think just fall right out of that. And the first one is this, is our words, the stuff that comes out of our mouth because of our tongue, guide our lives. Our words guide our lives. See, he's making a couple of illustrations that I think are really easy to follow. The first one is of a horse. He talks about, consider, this great behemoth beast of an animal. When I was in high school, I got to ride a horse for my first time, and it was literally my first, maybe second time riding a horse. And I remember we were out on this private farm, next to this pond, and it was idyllic and serene, somewhere in Indiana. And so I'm like, riding this horse around, this big beast of a thing. And all of a sudden, this storm popped up and this lightning bolt came down, and my horse freaked out and bucked me off that thing. And I've only been on a horse once since then. And it was whenever my daughter, Ruthie, my oldest daughter Ruthie, had the opportunity to ride a horse a few months ago. And I got a picture of that's going to come up. And she, we had some really good friends who were very kind to us and let us go into a ranch, and I got to ride a little, a big horse that barely walked side by side with Ruthie, and it's fun. But you look at this and man, my small, tiny 8-year-old daughter is able to control this behemoth of an animal by a bit that is in its mouth and some reins that go right or left. And see, it's a tiny girl guiding a massive horse through a tiny mouthpiece. And he gives us this picture of the reality that our words guide our lives. And he gives us this picture of a horse, but then he also gives us a picture of a large ship. And I looked it up this week, and I've looked it up before, but the largest ship, and a lot of you guys would know this, and at least the largest ship to date of 2017 is the USS Gerald R. Ford. And so since, some of you tuning in, some of you with us, you may have actually been on this ship at one point and everything. And I just want to give you a few statistics when it comes to the Gerald R. Ford. See, it cost approximately $13 billion to build. Figured I'd give you that information because that's pretty insane. Actually, $4.7 billion went into research and development before the $13 million went to build this ship. It's 1,100 feet long. Okay, so it is legitimately nearly a quarter of a mile long, and it can carry over 75 aircraft as well as a crew of 4,539 people. 4,539 people in the crew. It weighs approximately 100,000 tons. And when it's out on the open ocean in full throttle, it can travel at about 35 miles an hour, and it's powered by four large propellers that are generated by nuclear power. It's 250% more powerful than pretty much anything that has power. And the thing is this ship, the USS Gerald R. Ford, this ship, okay, is operated by two, not one, but two tiny little rudders that are 1/1000th the size of the ship. So 1/1000th the size of the ship. and they are steering this huge 100,000-ton ship out on the open ocean at 35 miles an hour with 4,539 people on it. And James says, consider this ship and how that rudder is guiding it. And consider your life and how your tongue is guiding it. Your words are literally guiding your life. See, our words, they help shape people's perception of us, don't they? Our words determine the opportunities that we get or the lack thereof. Our words open doors for us in life, and they close doors for us in life. Our words play a significant role in the presence and the quality of our friendships and relationships with our friends and our family. And so the question that I want to ask you as we keep digging in, and who or what is directing that thing in your mouth? Who or what is directing your rudder? If this is your rudder, or if this is your bit, who or what is directing it? See, do you have a grip on it? Do you like? I mean, I know, like you know, we get so many people in our culture where it's like glamorized that you're just like, well, no, I just say things how it is. I'm a straight shooter, you know. That whatever that crap of political correctness, that's not me. I just tell it like it is. And I think what James would say is, hey, be careful with that little rudder that you have in your mouth. Be careful with that tongue that you have in your mouth. Consider what a forest can be set ablaze. Consider the relationships. Consider the people. Consider the steering of what's happening, because as the words are flying out of your mouth, your rudder is turning the ship of your life and guiding you in a direction. And man, my prayer for me, my prayer for you is that rudder is guiding you towards God, not away from Him in that. See, I look at this, and some of my greatest regrets in life, they go back to words that were said or weren't said, right? Go back to words that were said or words that weren't said. And just like that, the poison went out, the spark went out, the thing, and you just can't retract it, because I think the thing that James is trying to say is not only like are our words, like, do they guide us, but our words, they carry destructive power. Literally, our words, I was going to put it this way, our words are like little nuclear, have the potential to be little nuclear bombs that just blow things up. See, you probably heard that the nursery rhyme, like sticks and stones may break my bones, words never hurt me. And it's like, you know, like, what, like, no, that's wrong. Like, that's just not true. I mean, when you look at the state of our county, our city, in 2020, 419 people took their lives. In 2019, 419 people took their lives. In 2000, and you might be like, well, it's a COVID year, you know, it's up or whatever. Actually, in 2019, before COVID, 429 people took their lives. So it's down 10 from 2019 into a COVID year. And you know what that is? That's approximately, it's almost 13 people per 100,000 residents that have taken their own lives, which is insane. And many of them are young. And you could trace it back, and a lot of those sad, tragic deaths were because of words that were or were not spoken in people's lives. See, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me is just a big load of crap, because our words carry destructive power. They do. Our words carry destructive power. We've talked about this in the negative light. You know, as to us being the perpetrators, but let's be honest. If you think about your life, and I think about mine, many of our deepest wounds have to do with words spoken to us, or when we were younger. You know, because somebody kicked the lantern and we got burnt. Somebody kicked the lantern. You know, maybe it was, you know, like, why can't you be like your fill in the blank, or you're just never gonna amount to much. You're just not good enough, or you're just a loser. And I think about this all the time, because Ruthie and Jenny were fairly easy to parent, my 8 and 6-year-old. But my 4-year-old's crazy, y'all. And she does not listen the same way that the other ones do. And I get furious, if I can be honest with you. And I've said some things that I regret to my 4-year-old. and constantly Kelsey is having to talk to me, and constantly Kelsey's having to move in and just be like, man, like you got to speak words of life to this little girl, because she's taking it in, and when you think about, you know, some of your deepest wounds, I don't want to leave those wounds for her. And so I've got to control the poison. I got to control the fire. I got to control the stuff that's coming out of my mouth. See, some of you are holding on to what a parent or someone said to you about your appearance, and it's wounded you. And some of you very, very, very deeply. And some of us in the room, some of us tuning in, have not just been wounded by words that were said, but by words that were not said, right? Maybe you never heard "I love you" growing up, or you know, or maybe you just never heard that they were proud of you, or that they appreciated you, or anything like that. See, the digital age has contributed to this power of words, right? And the power of wounding through words. I mean, honestly, I think if James were to rewrite this today, or to write this for us today, I think a lot of it would be based around our, you know, what we do with our little thumbs, and how we, you know, the text messages that we send, the emails that we send, the social media, you know, story, whatever that we send. And see, there's this growing phenomenon of keyboard courage. You know, we get behind a keyboard and we get behind a screen and we say things that maybe we would never say, and the words go out and the rudder is turning and the destruction is happening. And you know, behind the comfort of a screen. You think about social media posts and comments, emails, texts that would never be spoken, and you know, and I honestly, it could go beyond that, because there's a destructive power in words that not only has to do with actually like confrontation, but the destructive power of words, I think, in the sense that, man, the accessibility that we all have because of these devices in our pockets, and how words are just always coming and going. They're just always going out. Like, there's no time of day that we just stop with the words. The words are just going, and all of a sudden, like, it can erode the intimacy between our children, the intimacy between our spouse, the intimacy that we have, because the words just keep flying all the time. So they're destructive in power, not because of just the confrontational nature of them, but also because of the you know, the fact that words have a time, a place, a when, and a who to them. They just do. We're not meant to be on it all the time. And I think that, you know, I think we just got to be careful with our words in such a digital era. But I think it's also worth mentioning that whenever we kick the lantern over in someone else, and we're confrontational or whatever, we kick the lantern over, man, we get wounded too, man. We get burnt. We don't just start the fire and, you know, and stuff. Our words not only have destructive power towards other people, but our words have destructive power toward us. And so James he's highlighting on this, and he says this in verse 9. He says, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who've been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. And I would say this, many of us in this room, us. You know, many of us that are tuning in, we have no problem with singing the songs, right? We have no problem with behind closed doors or in public praying. We have no problem with professing that we follow Jesus. But when we get around the right people, right? When we get, you know, around that person or these people or whatever, we also have no problem at ripping another human being to shreds. And maybe that's somebody that you work with, that it's just easy whenever you're, you know, around these people, you tear down this person that you work with because of some of the things that they did. Maybe it's because you watch too much talk show, you know, news, and all of a sudden, like, you have no problem when you get with your like-minded people of ripping another person. Doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum they're on, another person who is created in the image of God, and you have absolutely no problem using your words to rip them to shreds. And what James is saying is, my brothers and sisters, this should not be. This absolutely should not be. This is like two springs flowing out of you that come from different sources that are happening. And he's saying, this ain't right. This ain't right. I mean, whatever. The rest of the world can do this because there is this destructive power that's in our tongues. The rest of the world can do this. But if you claim to follow Jesus, he said, if you claim to follow my resurrected brother, Jesus, this ain't right. This ain't cool. Our words were never meant to tear down other people made in the image of God. It just shouldn't happen. There's no excuse. I do it, you do it, and there is no excuse for it, is what James is saying. There's no excuse. He goes on to say this, because he's starting to bridge it together. He says, who's wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly. It's unspiritual and it's demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder in every single evil practice. And he's starting to bridge these two sections together here. Okay, he's kind of like gone off a little bit from just talking specifically about the tongue, but he's starting to bridge this together a little bit. And I think that I can't help but think that he had his brother's words in mind as we go to Matthew chapter 12, and Jesus said this. Okay, I can't help but think that as he wrote this, he was thinking about this teaching from Jesus, Matthew chapter 12, verse 33, which says this. It says, "Make a tree good and its fruit will be good, or make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. You brood of vipers." And he's talking to the religious leaders of the day. He's talking to the people who thought they were super spiritual, who would rip people to shreds and talk about people behind their backs and slander and do this. He says, "You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For the mouth," okay, here it is. This is what we need to zoom in on. "For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. But I tell you that everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word that they've spoken. For by your words you'll be acquitted, and by your words you'll be condemned." See, referring back to verse 2 here, as James is talking this, he says, we all stumble in many ways. Anyone who's never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. And what he's saying is there's a continuity between our speech and our lives. And together they tell our story for us. Together they tell our story. So number 3, if you're following along, is our words, they communicate our story and reveal the condition of our hearts. Our words communicate our story and they reveal the condition of our hearts. He says nobody's perfect, but our words are revealing the continuity between our speech and our lives, okay? And they tell our story for us. They reveal what is in our heart. See, James paints this picture, and going in verse 13, he paints this picture of somebody who, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm just going to throw it out there, and you can turn me off and tune out and go tune in wherever the heck you want to tune in, because that's what we do nowadays, right? But he paints this picture, I think, of somebody who's watched too much talk show radio or talk show news. Paints this picture of this somebody who always finds something wrong with the world around them and always has something to perpetually grumble about. Okay, and he's saying, okay, here's the deal. There is a perceived, okay, if you look at like what's going on in the world and you look at things from whatever perspective, whatever filter you want to put on it, with whatever people that you want to put on it, you can take anything and you can say something bad about it, right? You can do it, right? You can take absolutely anything that's going on and you'd be like, well, yeah, well, but, have you thought about this? Like, well, yeah, well, but have you, and he's saying there is a perception of wisdom in that. There's a perception of wisdom in cynicism. There's a perception of wisdom in grumbling over, certain things. And there's just a perception, like clever, it's literally, he's painting this picture of a person who's always pulling other people down, okay? Somebody who's always saying, yeah, but, and pulling other people down, and then maybe inadvertently, they're pushing themselves forward. And so they're pushing themselves pulling somebody else down and pushing themselves forward. And Jesus confronted the religious leaders who are doing the very same thing right here. But James is painting this picture of somebody who's pulling others down, whether that be a political thing or a social media thing or whatever, but somebody pulling others down and pushing themselves forward and casting themselves in a good light. And there's an appearance of wisdom to that. In clever, quick-witted joke, cynicism, it's a formative appearance of wisdom. James uses very strong language to say, actually, what it is, it's unspiritual and it's demonic, because here's the thing that I need you to hear, okay? Because this is for Christ followers. There is some good always in our world. I mean, it's a fallen world, yes. There's a lot of evil, injustice, and bad things, but there is some good that is in this world, all around us, that is worthy of our words. There is some good that is worthy of our words. And James says it like this. He says, I'm finished off the passage. He says, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is this. It's first of all pure, okay? And then it's peace-loving. It's considerate. It's submissive. It's full of mercy and good fruit. It's impartial and it's sincere. And then he says this. He ends this little section by saying, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. And I would say this, the fourth and final point, is that God's desire is for our lives, including our words, to bring hope, inspire hope, and bring peace. So God's desire is for our lives, including our words, to inspire hope and to bring peace. See, I want you to look over each of those attributes. I think it'd be a really good exercise for all of us this week to look over each of these attributes. See, he says wisdom that comes from heaven, okay? There's an appearance of this wisdom that's perpetual grumbling. There's an appearance of this wisdom that we find on, talk show, news, garbage. There's an appearance of this wisdom that we see day in and day out in the culture around us that's cynical and quick-witted and quick to pull others down and push our agenda forward. There's an appearance of wisdom in that's demonic. The wisdom that comes from Jesus, the wisdom that comes from heaven, is pure. It's peace-loving. It's considerate. It's submissive. It's full of mercy. It's full of good fruit. It's impartial, and it's sincere. It's sincere. And I think it'd be good of us this week to look over that list and to review our lives in light of that list. Because 9 times out of 10, what's going to fuel those things in our life is going to be our words. It's going to be the things that come out of our mouth. And I think it'd be also helpful to review, like, what are the times, what are the places, and who are the people that make it hard for you to live this way? Who are the people that make you insincere? Who are the people that you cannot show mercy to? Who are the people that don't make you submissive but make you contrarian to them? Who are the people that make you inconsiderate? And what are the times of day? Who do you want to just war and quarrel with? And who do you want to reject being a peacemaker around? And I would follow it up with pray for wisdom from above. Pray for wisdom from above. And what I have is, if you're following the note sheet that came in the email or on the website, you're following the note sheet that comes along, I have just some recommendations for you. I mean, I put using your tongue to inspire hope and bring peace. Number 1, check your heart. Jesus said the indicator of what will come out is what is in your heart. Your mouth speaks. Your tongue speaks what the heart is full of. So check your heart and put good things in your heart. And when you put good things in your heart, good things will come out of your mouth. You will begin to tame your tongue only when you guard and you check and you input good into your heart. Seek accountability. Talk to somebody about the how you want to. Half the battle is just letting people know, like, you're not happy with the words that are coming out of your mouth. You're not happy with that. And you'd like maybe your spouse or, maybe your kids to hold you accountable to better words and and stuff. And I'd say the third thing is just asking God for help. It's asking God for help. See, we're going to move into a time of communion where we literally look at a Jesus who was absolutely wronged. And as he was breathing his final breath, he used his words. He used his words to pray for those who were killing him. And he used his words to pray for you and to pray for me. And we find all of our hope. We put all of our trust in his death, his burial, and his resurrection, showing that he has the power over life and death, and he has the power over your tongue, and he can help you be someone who tames your tongue and someone who uses it to inspire hope and to bring peace. So I'm going to invite you to take communion with us, that just grab some food to remember the body of Jesus was broken, and grab some drink to remember the blood of Jesus that was spilled out. And I'm going to have you pray this very simple prayer with me for this time of communion this morning. Jesus, we thank you for the hope that we have in you. And Jesus, we know that you desire us to speak words of life. So today, I want to confess that I need your help. We need your help. So please create words of peace and words of hope on my lips today. In your name, Jesus. Amen. We hope you have a great week, and that you have a great day, you have a great week, and we hope to see you sometime soon at Veterans Park Community Center for Church 180's Sunday service. Much love, guys.